Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the window of her quarters aboard the Grand Conclave station and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of humans waited to hear if there would be peace or more war. She carried their hopes on her shoulders, and the weight was heavy. The war had lasted 18 months. 18 months of blood and fire and sacrifice. Humanity had never asked for this conflict. They had simply expanded into space, built colonies, and tried to make a life among the stars. But the galactic hegemony had other ideas. 5 ancient species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years did not welcome newcomers, especially not newcomers who refused to bow. Elena turned from the window and looked at her reflection. She was 52 years old, with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes that had not been there before the war. She had buried friends. She had signed orders that sent young soldiers to their deaths. And now she was here, hoping to end it all with words instead of weapons. Her aide, Commander James Chen, entered the room. He was a tall man with a serious face and the careful movements of someone who had seen combat. Ambassador, the hegemony delegation is ready. They're waiting in the main chamber. Elena nodded and straightened her uniform. It was simple and dark blue, without medals or decorations. She had chosen it deliberately. She wanted to look like someone who came for peace, not someone who came to boast. How do they seem? She asked. James hesitated. Confident, ma'am. Very confident. Elena understood what he meant. The hegemony had requested these peace talks after humanity had fought them to a standstill. But they did not act like a group seeking compromise. They acted like winners graciously offering terms to losers. This worried her, but she pushed the feeling aside. She had to try. The walk to the main chamber took several minutes. The Grand Conclave station was enormous, a city floating in space where the great powers of the galaxy had met for centuries to discuss treaties and trade. Humanity had never been invited here before. They had never been considered important enough. The doors to the chamber opened, and Elena stepped inside. The room was vast and circular, with a domed ceiling that showed the stars above. 5 delegations sat at curved tables arranged in a half-circle, each representing one of the hegemony's ruling species. At the center sat the Vorathi, tall and slender beings with pale skin and eyes that held no warmth. Their leader was High Arbiter Thiessen, the most powerful individual in the galaxy. He did not stand when Elena entered. None of them did. Elena walked to the single table that had been placed facing the others. It was smaller than theirs and positioned lower. Another deliberate insult. She sat down anyway and folded her hands on the table. High Arbiter Thiessen, she said, keeping her voice calm and respectful. Thank you for agreeing to these discussions. Humanity comes here in good faith, seeking an end to the conflict that has cost both our peoples dearly. Thiessen regarded her with an expression that might have been boredom. He was ancient by any species standards, having lived for over 300 years. To him, humanity was a brief spark, barely worth noticing. We have gathered to offer terms, he said. His voice was cold and precise. You will listen. Elena felt her jaw tighten, but kept her face neutral. I had hoped we might discuss terms together. Negotiation requires both sides to speak. A sound came from the Keth Ali delegation to her left. It took Elena a moment to recognize it as laughter. The Keth Ali were short and broad, with thick gray skin and small eyes. Their ambassador, a female named Vorth, leaned forward with amusement on her face. Discuss? Little human, your species has existed for the blink of an eye. Your oldest civilizations are younger than the furniture in this room. What could you possibly contribute to a discussion with us? Elena kept her voice steady. Perhaps a fresh perspective. Perspective, said another voice. This came from the Sundari delegation. Insect-like beings who communicated through a translation device. That made their words sound mechanical. Your perspective is that of children playing with weapons they do not understand. You have been fortunate. Nothing more. Elena looked around the room. The Morvath delegation, beings made of living crystal who rarely spoke, simply watched with their faceted eyes. The Zilkari, tall and covered in fine scales, whispered among themselves. None of them showed any sign of viewing humanity as an equal. High Arbiter Thiessen raised a thin hand for silence. We will now present the terms of peace. You will cede the colony worlds of New Helsinki, prosperity, and a Charon's gate to hegemony control. You will accept guidance councils on all remaining human worlds to ensure compliance with galactic law. Your military fleet will be reduced to defensive vessels only, with a maximum of 50 ships. You will pay reparations for the damage caused during the conflict. Elena stared at him. For a moment, she could not speak. These were not peace terms. These were terms of surrender. Complete and total surrender. High Arbiter, she said slowly. These terms would reduce humanity to a servant species. We came here to negotiate peace, not to accept subjugation. Thiesen's expression did not change. These are generous terms. You should be grateful we are offering them at all. Many on this council argued for your complete destruction. Generous? Elena could not keep the disbelief from her voice. You would take our worlds, control our governments, and dismantle our ability to defend ourselves. How is this generous? The Cathali ambassador Vorth spoke again. It is generous because you would survive. Your species would continue to exist. Given your primitive development and aggressive nature, this is more than you deserve. Elena felt anger rising in her chest, but she controlled it. She had trained for moments like this. She knew that losing her temper would only confirm their beliefs about humanity. Perhaps we could find middle ground, she said. We are willing to discuss border adjustments. We are willing to establish trade agreements and cultural exchanges. We are even willing to limit certain military developments if the hegemony agrees to the same limits. But we cannot accept terms that strip us of our sovereignty and dignity. High Arbiter Thiesen turned away from her. He simply turned his back and began speaking to the Sindari ambassador about something else entirely. Elena stopped mid-sentence, shocked. She had been dismissed like a servant who had overstayed her welcome. She waited. The hegemony leaders continued their private conversations. Minutes passed. Finally, Thiesen glanced over his shoulder as if surprised she was still there. You may have a recess to consider our terms. We expect your acceptance when you return. Elena stood slowly. Her hands were steady, but inside she felt something changing, something hardening. I will consult with my government, she said quietly. Thiesen waved a hand without looking at her. Take whatever time you need. The outcome will be the same. Elena walked out of the chamber. Her delegation followed in silence. None of them spoke until they reached their quarters and the doors sealed behind them. Mum. Commander Chen said, his voice tight with controlled fury. They didn't even pretend to negotiate. They just dictated terms and turned their backs on you. I know. What do we do? Elena walked to the communication console and entered her authorization codes. A direct line to Earth. To the people who would make the final decision, we tell them the truth. She said, the hegemony doesn't want peace. They want submission. They think we're desperate and weak. They think we have no choice but to accept whatever scraps they throw us. The connection established. The face of Secretary General Morrison appeared on the screen, tired and worried. Ambassador, how did it go? Elena told him everything. The terms, the insults, the turnbacks, the complete and utter contempt the hegemony had shown for humanity. When she finished, there was a long silence. What is your assessment? Morrison finally asked. Elena thought carefully before answering. They don't respect us, sir. They never will as long as they believe we are weak. If we accept these terms, we become nothing. A footnote in galactic history. A species that surrendered its future for survival. And if we refuse, then we show them who we really are. All of us. Everything we've been holding back. Another long silence. Then Morrison nodded slowly. I've just received word from the Joint Chiefs. The Prometheus fleet is fully operational ahead of schedule. We have options we didn't have before. Elena closed her eyes briefly. The Prometheus fleet, humanity's secret. Their insurance policy. Ships built in hidden shipyards. Designed with everything humanity had learned from 18 months of war. She had hoped they would never need to reveal it. Your orders, Ambassador, Morrison said. Show them nothing. Tell them nothing. Simply leave. Let them wonder. Let them worry. And let them understand that humanity does not beg. Elena opened her eyes. The uncertainty and hope she had carried into the peace talks were gone. In their place was something colder and harder. Something that had been forged in humanity's long and bloody history. Understood, sir. She ended the communication and turned to her team. Their faces were grim but determined. "Pack everything. We leave within the hour. No explanations, no goodbyes, no messages, until we're clear of the station." Commander Chen nodded. "What about the hegemony? They'll want answers." Elena looked toward the window, toward the stars where humanity waited. "They'll get their answer, and they won't like it." She thought about High Arbiter Thiessen turning his back on her. She thought about the laughter and the contempt. And she thought about all the humans who had died in this war, fighting for the right to exist as equals in a galaxy that saw them as insects. "We tried," she thought. "We came with open hands and honest hearts. You slapped our hands away and mocked our hearts. Now you will learn what humanity does when pushed too far." The packing began. Outside, the stars continued to shine, cold and distant and eternal. They had seen countless species rise and fall. Soon they would witness something new. They would witness the moment when humanity stopped asking for respect and started demanding it. And the galaxy would never be the same. High Arbiter Thiessen sat in his private chambers aboard the Grand Conclave station and reviewed reports from across the hegemony. The war with the humans had been an inconvenience, nothing more. A minor species had needed to be taught its place, and soon that lesson would be complete. The peace talks were merely a formality. His aide, a young Varathi named Selek, entered with a tablet in his hands. His expression was strange. "High Arbiter, the recess has ended. The human delegation has not returned to the chamber." Thiessen looked up with mild annoyance. "Then summon them." "They are wasting our time, sir." I attempted to contact them. There was no response. This was unusual. Thiessen frowned and set down his reports. "Perhaps they need more time to accept reality. Send someone to their quarters directly." Selek bowed and departed. Thiessen returned to his work, but a small seed of unease had planted itself in his mind. He pushed it aside. Humans were emotional creatures. They probably needed time to grieve their lost pride before surrendering to the inevitable. 20 minutes passed. Selek returned, and this time his face was pale. "High Arbiter, the human quarters are empty. Their ships have undocked from the station. They are leaving." Thiessen stood so quickly that his chair fell backward. "Leaving? Without a word? Without signing the treaty?" "Yes, sir. They are already clear of the station's approach zone and accelerating toward human space." For a long moment, Thiessen could not process what he was hearing. No species had ever simply walked away from peace talks with the hegemony. The idea was absurd. It was unthinkable. And yet the humans had done exactly that. Get me a channel to their flagship. Now, minutes later, Thiessen stood in the main communications center, surrounded by representatives from all 5 hegemony species. They were all confused and angry. The Kethali ambassador Vorth looked ready to kill someone. The Sindari clicked their mandibles in agitation. Even the usually silent Morvath had gathered to witness this unprecedented event. The communication channel opened, but instead of a live connection, a recorded message began to play. Ambassador Elena Vasquez appeared on every screen in the room. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something new, something hard and cold. "To the leaders of the galactic hegemony," she began. "We came to this station hoping for peace. We came with open hands and honest hearts, ready to compromise and find common ground. Instead, we received contempt. You offered us chains and called them gifts. You turned your backs on us and expected us to kneel." Thiessen felt his anger rising. How dare this creature lecture him? "Humanity does not kneel," Elena continued. "Not to you, not to anyone. We have tried to show you that we want only to live in peace among the stars. You have made it clear that you see us as nothing but insects to be crushed, or slaves to be controlled." Her expression hardened. "So be it. We reject your terms. All of them. There will be no surrender of our worlds. There will be no guidance councils. There will be no dismantling of our fleets. Instead, there will be truth. You are about to learn what humanity really is. And I promise you, the lesson will be painful." She leaned closer to the camera. "When you are ready to speak to us as equals, as partners, you know where to find us. Until that day comes, we have nothing more to discuss." The message ended. The screens went dark. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Vorth broke it first. They dare refuse us? This is suicide," the Sindari ambassador buzzed. They cannot hope to stand against the full might of the hegemony. Their military is stretched thin. Our intelligence confirms their resources are nearly depleted. Thiessen said nothing. He was thinking. Something about this felt wrong. The humans had fought surprisingly well during the war, but they had seemed desperate in recent months. Their attacks had become less frequent. Their defense lines had contracted. All signs pointed to a species on the edge of collapse. So why did Ambassador Vasquez look so calm? Why did she speak with such certainty? Summon the intelligence minister, Thiessen ordered. I want every report on human military capacity in my hands within the hour, and prepare the combined fleet. If the humans want war instead of peace, we will give them war they cannot imagine. The other leaders nodded with satisfaction. The humans had made their choice. Now they would face the consequences. 3 days later, the combined fleet of the galactic hegemony assembled near the border of human space. 4,000 warships from 5 species, the largest military force gathered in centuries. It was overwhelming. It was unstoppable. It was a statement that no primitive species could stand against the masters of the galaxy. Admiral Corveth of the Kethali stood on the bridge of his flagship and surveyed the fleet with pride. He had been given command of this grand armada, an honor he intended to justify with complete victory. The humans had been clever in their guerrilla tactics during the war, but they could not fight a force like this. They would be crushed within weeks. His communications officer approached. Admiral, we are receiving the latest intelligence updates. Corveth took the tablet and began reading. Then he stopped. He read the same section again and again. This cannot be correct, he said quietly. Sir, these numbers, human industrial output during the war, it says their production has increased, tripled. That is impossible. The officer shifted uncomfortably. The intelligence ministry confirms the data, Admiral. The humans appear to have expanded their manufacturing capacity significantly during the conflict. Corveth felt the first hint of doubt enter his mind. During the war, human attacks had decreased. Their visible fleet had shrunk. Everyone had assumed this meant they were weakening. But what if it meant something else? What if they had been pulling back deliberately? What if they had been building something in secret? He pushed the thought aside. It did not matter. 4,000 ships against whatever the humans could muster. The mathematics were undeniable. The fleet began its advance into human space. The first human colony they encountered was New Helsinki, a world on the edge of human territory. It had been a primary target in the original war plans, a rich planet with significant industrial capacity. Taking it would cripple humanity's ability to fight. But when the hegemony ships arrived, they found something unexpected. The colony was empty. Scout vessels descended to the surface and reported cities standing silent and abandoned. Factories still operational but unattended. Homes with meals half-eaten on tables. It was as if the entire population had simply vanished. Where are they? Corveth demanded. 7 million humans lived on this world. Where did they go? No one could answer him. The fleet moved deeper into human space. More worlds, more empty cities, more abandoned colonies. The humans had evacuated their border territories completely, and they had done it with impossible speed and efficiency. There was no chaos, no refugee streams, no panic. Just silent cities waiting like tombs. Then the messages started. Every screen on every hegemony ship suddenly activated. The same images appeared everywhere, and no one could stop them. The humans had somehow hacked into the hegemony's communication systems. The images showed human history. Thiessen watched from the conclave station, where he had remained to coordinate the campaign. He saw humans fighting each other with primitive weapons. He saw cities burning. He saw nuclear explosions and mass graves and suffering beyond imagination. What is this? Vorth demanded. Why are they showing us their failures? But Thiessen understood. His blood ran cold as he watched. The images continued. After every disaster, after every war, after every plague and famine and horror, the same thing happened. Humans rebuilt. They came back stronger. They adapted and learned and grew. No matter how many times they fell, they rose again. They are not showing us their weakness. Thiessen said quietly. They are showing us what they survive. The final image appeared. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, sitting in a chair aboard her flagship, looking directly into the camera. "By now you have noticed that our colonies are empty," she said. "Our people are safe, hidden in places you will never find. You came expecting easy victory. You expected to conquer frightened civilians and crush scattered defenders. You were wrong." She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "You wanted to know what humanity is capable of. We tried to spare you that lesson. We tried to end this peacefully. You refused. So now you will learn the truth about our species. We have spent 18 months holding back. We have spent 18 months building. We have spent 18 months preparing for this moment." She leaned forward. "You think you know war. You don't, but you're about to." The transmission ended. For a long moment, the hegemony fleet drifted in silence. Then the sensors began to scream. Contact reports flooded in from every direction. Ships, hundreds of ships, thousands of ships, emerging from asteroids, from hidden bases, from locations that intelligence had marked as empty. The humans had been hiding their true fleet, and now it was appearing everywhere. Admiral Corveth stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The human fleet was larger than they had believed possible. It surrounded his forces from 17 different vectors, and the ship designs were unlike anything they had seen before. Sleeker, more advanced, built with 18 months of war experience and innovation. "All ships, battle formation," he shouted. "Prepare for combat." But even as he gave the orders, Corveth understood the truth. The hegemony had not come to end a war. They had walked into a trap that had been prepared with patience and precision and a level of strategic thinking that the galaxy had never seen from humans. Thiessen watched from the conclave station as the tactical reports arrived. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the terrible realization of how badly they had miscalculated. The humans had not been desperate. They had not been weakening. They had been waiting, baiting, drawing the hegemony into exactly this position. And now the lesson was about to begin. In the vast darkness of space, thousands of engines ignited as the human fleet moved to engage. They had tried peace. They had offered mercy. Both had been rejected. Now there was only war. And humanity had been preparing for this war longer and more carefully than anyone had imagined. The galaxy was about to learn why humans called themselves survivors. And the hegemony was about to discover that some lessons could only be taught through pain. Admiral Corveth watched the human fleet close in from every direction. His sensors showed over 3,000 warships, and more kept appearing. The numbers alone were stunning, but what truly frightened him was their coordination. The human vessels moved as one, flowing around his formation like water around a stone. Cutting off every escape route, "All ships fire at will," he commanded. "Target their largest vessels first." The hegemony fleet opened fire. Thousands of weapons discharged at once, filling space with deadly energy. It was the most destructive display of firepower Corveth had ever witnessed. Surely nothing could survive such an attack, but the human ships did not simply absorb the fire. They danced. There was no other word for it. Their vessels twisted and turned in ways that should have been impossible for ships their size. Hegemony weapons that should have struck home instead hit empty space. And then the humans returned fire. The first wave of human weapons struck the hegemony's left flank. 3 Keth Ali battleships exploded in rapid succession. A Vorothi carrier lost its engine section and began tumbling through space. A Sindari cruiser's shields collapsed in seconds, and the ship behind it suffered the same fate. Corveth gripped his command chair as his own flagship shuddered from a near miss. "Their weapons are stronger than we predicted. How is this possible?" His tactical officer's voice was tight with fear. "Admiral, their targeting systems are more advanced than anything in our database. They are hitting with 93% accuracy. Our fleet average is 61%. 61% had always been considered excellent. Now it seemed like a death sentence. The battle continued, and with each passing minute, the situation grew worse. The human ships worked in perfect teams. When a hegemony vessel focused on one human ship, 2 others would strike it from different angles. When Corveth tried to concentrate his forces, the humans simply flowed around the formation and attacked from behind. And then there was the way humans fought. Corveth had commanded fleets for 50 years. He understood the mathematics of space combat. When a ship took critical damage, its crew surrendered or abandoned ship. That was how civilized species fought. You accepted defeat when defeat was certain. Humans did not do this. A human destroyer took a direct hit that destroyed half its hull. Any sensible crew would have evacuated. Instead, the destroyer turned directly toward a Kefali battleship and accelerated. Its remaining weapons fired continuously as it closed the distance. The battleship's point defense destroyed the human ship, but not before it had crippled the battleship's shields. Moments later, another human vessel finished the job. This scene repeated across the battlefield. Human ships that should have retreated instead pressed their attacks. Human crews that should have surrendered instead fought to the last. It was terrifying. It was incomprehensible. And it was devastatingly effective. "They fight like they want to die," Corveth whispered. His executive officer heard him. "Sir, I don't think they want to die. I think they simply accept death as a possibility. And that acceptance gives them freedom to act without fear." Corveth understood what she meant. The hegemony trained its crews to calculate odds, to preserve resources, to fight efficiently. Humans seemed to fight with their hearts instead of their minds. And somehow, against all logic, that emotional approach was winning. For hours into the battle, Corveth's fleet had lost over 800 ships. The humans had lost perhaps 100. But what shocked Corveth most was how the humans handled their victories. When hegemony ships were disabled, the humans did not destroy them. They simply moved on to the next target. Escape pods were ignored, not attacked. Crippled vessels were left drifting, their crews still alive. The humans were dismantling his fleet piece by piece, but they were not committing massacre. Why? Corveth demanded. "Why don't they finish us?" A communication signal interrupted him. A human face appeared on his screen, a young woman with short dark hair and calm eyes. Her uniform identified her as a captain. "Admiral Corveth," she said, "your flagship's shields are failing. Your engine output is reduced by 40%. Half your weapon systems are offline. You have fought well, but this battle is over." Corveth's pride flared. "We have not surrendered." "No," the human captain agreed. "You haven't, and we respect that. But we are not here to destroy you. We are here to teach you. Surrender your vessel, and your crew will be treated with honor. Refuse, and we will disable your ship completely. Either way, you will survive this day. You would spare us?" Why? The captain's expression softened slightly. "Because killing you proves nothing. We don't want your extinction. We want your respect. There's a difference." Corveth looked at his bridge crew. They were exhausted, frightened, and defeated. Many were wounded. His ship was dying around him, and continuing to fight would only get more of them killed. He made the hardest decision of his career. "All ships," he said into the fleet channel. "This is Admiral Corveth. Stand down. Cease fire. We surrender." Across the battlefield, hegemony weapons fell silent. Human ships stopped firing immediately. For a long moment, the vast silence of space seemed to echo with the weight of what had happened. The humans began rescue operations at once. Their shuttles moved among the wreckage, picking up survivors from damaged hegemony vessels. Medical teams boarded crippled ships to treat the wounded. Captured crews were transported to human vessels and treated not as prisoners, but as guests. Corveth watched all of this in confusion. This was not how victors behaved. This was not how conquered species were treated. What were the humans doing? Hours later, Corveth was escorted to the human flagship, a massive vessel called the Unity. He was brought not to a cell but to a conference room where Ambassador Elena Vasquez waited. "Admiral," she said, gesturing to a chair. "Please sit. You must be exhausted." Corveth sat slowly, unable to read her expression. "I expected to die today, I know. Your fleet expected to conquer us in weeks. Both expectations were wrong. Why spare us? You could have destroyed every ship. You could have killed us all. We would have done that to you." Elena nodded. "Yes, you would have. And that is exactly why we chose differently." She stood and walked to a window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere in the distance, rescue operations continued. "Humanity has been conquering and destroying for most of our history," she said. "We have committed atrocities against each other that would horrify your species. We have burned cities and salted earth and exterminated entire peoples. We know what destruction accomplishes. We know where that path leads. She turned to face him. It leads to ashes and regret, to wounds that never heal, to hatred that lasts for generations. We learned this the hard way, through centuries of suffering. And we decided we didn't want to be that species anymore. But we attacked you. We tried to subjugate you. Yes, and if we slaughter you in return, what changes? Your species learns to hate us. Your children grow up wanting revenge. The cycle continues forever. Elena shook her head. We want something different. We want peace. Real peace. Not the silence of extinction, but the harmony of understanding. Corveth tried to process her words. They contradicted everything he knew about galactic politics. Power came from dominance. Security came from making others fear you. That was how the hegemony had maintained order for millennia. You think kindness is strength, he said slowly. You think mercy is power. I think kindness after victory is the only kind that matters. Anyone can be generous when they have nothing. The true test is what you do when you have everything. She sat back down across from him. Admiral, the hegemony's fleet is broken. Your military cannot stop us from doing whatever we want. We could conquer your worlds, enslave your people, take everything you have. You know this is true. Corveth nodded slowly. It was true. The defeat had been total. Instead, Elena continued, we are going to return your survivors. We are going to release your ships, those that can still fly. And we are going to invite the hegemony to return to the negotiating table. Not as masters and servants, but as equals. The council will never accept that. Then they will have time to think about it. Because we will not attack your worlds. We will simply wait. And every day that passes, your people will remember that humanity could have destroyed them and chose mercy instead. Eventually, someone will ask why. And then things will begin to change. Corveth sat in silence for a long time. His entire understanding of the galaxy was crumbling. Everything he had believed about power and security and civilization was being questioned. What do you want? He finally asked. What does humanity actually want? Elena smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. We want to stand beside you, not above you. We want to learn from your ancient civilizations and share what we have discovered. We want to explore the galaxy together and face its dangers as allies. We want, she paused, choosing her next words carefully. There is something coming, Admiral. Something from beyond the galactic rim. Our deep space probes detected it years ago. We tried to warn the hegemony at the peace talks, but no one would listen to us. That threat is why we built this fleet. Not to conquer you, but to prepare for what's coming. Corveth felt cold fear touch his heart. What kind of threat? The kind that makes our war look like children fighting over toys. The kind that won't care whether we're human or Cathali or Vorathi. The kind that will require every species in this galaxy working together if any of us are to survive. She leaned forward. We don't have time to hate each other, Admiral. We don't have the luxury of old grudges and ancient pride. Something is coming that will test all of us, and we would rather face it with friends than face it alone. Corveth thought about his fleet, broken but alive. He thought about the human crews who had treated his wounded with compassion. He thought about the young captain who had offered him surrender with respect instead of mockery. Maybe the humans were right. Maybe mercy was a kind of strength the hegemony had forgotten. I cannot speak for the council, he said finally, but I can speak for myself, and I can tell them what I witnessed today. Elena extended her hand. Corveth looked at it for a moment, then reached out and clasped it. That's all we ask, she said. Tell them the truth. Let them decide. Outside the window, the stars continued their eternal dance, but something had shifted. The old order of the galaxy was trembling, and a new possibility was being born from the ashes of battle. Humanity had won the war. Now they would try to win something harder, peace. High Arbiter Thiessen stood in the great hall of the Vorathi homeworld and watched the remnants of the hegemony fleet limp home. Through the massive windows that lined the chamber, he could see dozens of ships in orbit, many of them scarred and damaged. They had left as conquerors. They returned as survivors. Admiral Corveth's report played on screens throughout the hall. The other council members watched in silence as he described the battle, the human tactics, the devastating effectiveness, and most disturbing of all, the mercy. They let us go, Corveth said in the recording. His voice was tired but steady. They could have killed every last one of us. Instead, they saved our wounded, repaired our ships enough to fly home, and asked us to deliver a message. Thiessen felt the weight of every eye in the room turning toward him. He was the one who had dismissed the human ambassador. He was the one who had approved the terms that drove humanity to war. He was the one who had insisted the humans were weak and desperate. He had been wrong, catastrophically wrong. The Cathali ambassador Vorth broke the silence. This is a trick, it must be. They are weakening our resolve before striking at our homeworlds. If they wanted our homeworlds, Corveth's recording replied, they could take them now. Our fleet is crippled. We have nothing to stop them. And yet they stay in their own territory. They make no aggressive moves. They simply wait. Wait for what? The Sindari representative demanded. For us to accept reality. For us to understand that we cannot defeat them. For us to choose peace. Thiessen finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the Great Hall. Show them the final part of the message. Corveth nodded and activated another recording. Ambassador Elena Vasquez appeared, seated in a simple chair aboard her flagship. She looked directly at the camera, and Thiessen felt as though she was looking directly at him. Leaders of the galactic hegemony, she began. By now you understand the truth. Your fleet is broken. Your military advantage is gone. You stand at a crossroads that will determine the future of your civilizations. She paused, and her expression softened slightly. We know what you expected from us. Conquest, vengeance, the same cruelty you have shown other species throughout your history. We have chosen a different path. Humanity is not your enemy. We never wanted to be. We wanted only to live among the stars, to explore and grow and find our place in the galaxy. You forced this war upon us. But even so, we do not hate you. We do not want to see your people suffer. Elena stood and walked closer to the camera. There is a threat coming from beyond the galactic rim. Our sensors detected it 3 years ago. Something ancient and powerful is moving toward inhabited space. We do not know its exact nature, but we know it is dangerous. We know it will not distinguish between human and Vorathi, between Cathali and Sindari. It will consume everything in its path unless we stand together. Thiessen felt cold dread settling into his heart. The humans had mentioned this threat at the peace talks. He had dismissed it as desperation, as a lie to gain sympathy. But looking at Elena's face now, he saw no deception, only urgency. We ask you to return to the negotiating table, Elena continued, not as masters and servants, but as equals facing a common danger. Put aside your pride. Put aside your anger. Help us prepare for what is coming. Because if we face it divided, none of us will survive. The recording ended. Silence filled the Great Hall. The Morveth delegate, who had not spoken throughout the entire crisis, suddenly moved forward. The crystalline being's voice resonated through translation devices, deep and ancient. We remember the long silence, the Morveth said. 14,000 years ago, before the hegemony existed, something came from the void between galaxies. It destroyed 17 species before it was finally stopped. The cost was unimaginable. Our oldest records speak of this time with fear. Every leader in the room turned to stare at the Morveth. They were the most ancient of the hegemony species, but they rarely shared their history. You never told us this, Thiessen said. You never asked. You were too busy ruling and conquering. But the humans have looked outward, into the dark spaces where we fear to search. And they have seen something moving. Vorth shook her head stubbornly. Even if this threat is real, how can we trust the humans? They humiliated us. They destroyed our fleet. They destroyed our fleet, and then saved our crews. Admiral Corveth interjected. He had joined the council in person now, standing near the entrance with the bearing of a soldier who had seen too much. They could have taken revenge for every insult we threw at them. They chose compassion instead. That choice tells us more about humanity than any intelligence report. Thiessen closed his eyes. His mind traveled back to the peace talks, to the moment when he had turned his back on Ambassador Vasquez. He had meant it as a dismissal, a demonstration of hegemony superiority. Now he understood how it must have appeared to her, how it must have felt. And still, after everything, she offered peace. What do the humans want? Thiessen asked quietly. Specifically, what are their terms? Corveth answered. recognition of human sovereignty over their existing territory, return of human prisoners, a seat on the Galactic Council as an equal member, and a joint military command to prepare for the threat from the Rim. That is all? No reparations? No territorial demands? None. They want partners, not subjects. The Sindari representative clicked nervously. This is unprecedented. No species has ever defeated the hegemony and asked for so little. Because no species has ever thought beyond immediate victory, the Morveth said. The humans look at the larger picture. They see a galaxy in danger and choose to strengthen it rather than exploit it. This is wisdom we have forgotten. Thiessen made his decision. It hurt his pride. It challenged everything he had believed about power and civilization. But he had not become High Arbiter by ignoring reality, and reality was staring him in the face. Contact the humans, he said. Tell them we accept. Tell them we will meet wherever they choose, and we will speak as equals. Vorth exploded with anger. You cannot be serious. After what they did to us? What they did to us was defeat our fleet without destroying it. What they did was spare our people when they could have killed them. What they did was offer peace when they could have demanded surrender. Thiessen met her eyes steadily. They showed us mercy, Ambassador Vorth. Now we must find the courage to accept it. The vote was not unanimous. Vorth and the Sindari both opposed reaching out to humanity. But the Morveth, the Zilkari, and enough Vorathi supported Thiessen that the motion passed. A message was sent to the human fleet. The response came within hours. Ambassador Elena Vasquez would meet them at the Grand Conclave Station, the same place where peace talks had failed weeks before. This time, she said, things would be different. 3 days later, Thiessen walked into the main chamber of the Conclave Station. The room had been rearranged. The tables were now arranged in a circle, with no position higher or lower than any other. Humans sat alongside Vorathi, Cathali next to Zilkari. It was strange and uncomfortable, but also somehow right. Elena Vasquez rose when Thiessen entered. She did not smile, but she did not show anger either. Her expression was simply watchful, waiting to see what he would do. Thiessen walked to the center of the circle. Every eye in the room followed him. He had rehearsed what he would say, but now the words seemed inadequate. He decided to speak from his heart instead. Ambassador Vasquez, he began. When we last stood in this room, I turned my back on you. I dismissed your words. I treated you with contempt. I was wrong. The room was absolutely silent. I believed that power came from dominance. I believed that security came from making others fear you. I believed that humanity was a lesser species that needed to be controlled for its own good. He paused. I was wrong about all of these things. He looked around the circle, meeting the eyes of each delegate in turn. Your fleet proved that our military assumptions were incorrect. Your mercy proved that our moral assumptions were wrong. And your warning about the threat from the Rim has been confirmed by our own long-range sensors. Elena's expression shifted slightly. Surprise, perhaps. You confirmed it? We sent probes to the coordinates your message indicated. Something is there. Something large and approaching. Thiessen's voice was heavy. The Morveth tell us they have seen this kind of threat before. 14,000 years ago. It nearly destroyed everything. Then you understand why we built our fleet, Elena said, and why we chose not to use it against you. Yes, you were never preparing to conquer us. You were preparing to defend us, even though we gave you no reason to care whether we lived or died. Elena walked forward until she stood face to face with Thiessen. She was shorter than him by nearly a meter, but somehow she did not seem small. We care because that is who we choose to be, she said. Humanity has made terrible mistakes throughout our history. We have been the monsters in our own story more times than we can count. But we have also learned from those mistakes. We have grown, and we have decided that we will not spread our worst impulses to the stars. We will spread our best. She extended her hand. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. We are stronger together than apart. Will you stand with us? Thiessen looked at her hand. Such a simple gesture, such an enormous meaning. He reached out and clasped it. We will. 6 months had passed since the treaty signing, and the galaxy had transformed. What had once been the galactic hegemony was now the Galactic Alliance, a union of 6 species working together as equals for the first time in history. Old rivalries were set aside. Ancient hatreds were forgotten, because something far more dangerous was coming, and everyone knew that survival depended on unity. Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Alliance flagship, watching the joint fleet assemble. Ships from every species gathered in formation near the galactic rim. Thousands of vessels preparing to face the unknown. Human carriers flew alongside Vorathi battleships. Cathali destroyers protected Sindari command vessels. Even the mysterious Morveth had contributed their ancient warships, strange crystalline structures that hummed with power. Admiral Korveth approached and stood beside her. In the months since the war, he had become one of her closest allies. Their friendship seemed impossible, born from the ashes of conflict, but it had grown strong. "Final reports are in," he said. "The enemy will reach our defense line in approximately 4 hours." Elena nodded. She had studied everything the Morveth knew about the Long Silence, the ancient catastrophe that had nearly destroyed the galaxy 14,000 years ago. The records were fragmentary and terrifying. The enemy was not a species in any traditional sense. It was something older and stranger, a force that consumed entire civilizations and used their resources to grow stronger. "Are the evacuation ships in position?" she asked. "The last civilian transports left the rim worlds this morning. Everyone who wanted to leave has left." Korveth paused. "Some chose to stay. Humans mostly. That sounds like us." Elena smiled slightly. "Stubborn to the end. Stubborn or brave. I am no longer sure there is a difference." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the fleet prepare. 6 months ago, Korveth had been her enemy. He had commanded the armada sent to destroy humanity. Now he was here, ready to fight beside her against a threat that made their old war seem meaningless. "Do you think we can win?" she asked quietly. Korveth considered the question seriously. The Morveth records say the enemy was defeated once before, but the cost was catastrophic. 17 species were completely destroyed. Dozens of others were devastated. It took thousands of years for the galaxy to recover. He turned to look at her directly. But those species were fighting alone, each defending their own territory, refusing to cooperate until it was too late. "We are different. We are united. United because humanity forced the issue. United because humanity showed us another way." Korveth's voice was warm with respect. "You could have destroyed us, Ambassador. You could have taken revenge for every insult and injury we gave your people. Instead, you offered mercy. That mercy is why we stand here together today." Elena thought about the long road that had led to this moment. The failed peace talks, the anger she had felt when Thiessen turned his back on her, the terrible decision to walk away and let the war resume, and then the choice, after victory, to spare rather than slaughter. "I was afraid," she admitted. "When we won the battle, I was afraid we would become the very thing we had fought against, conquerors, oppressors. I had seen too much human history to believe we were immune to that temptation. But you resisted. We all did. The entire human leadership agreed that we would offer peace instead of demanding surrender. We agreed that we would show the galaxy who we wanted to be, not who we had been." She smiled. "Honestly, I think we surprised ourselves." An alert sounded through the ship. Korveth checked his communicator, and his expression grew serious. "The enemy has been detected. They will arrive ahead of schedule. 2 hours, perhaps less." Elena straightened her uniform. "Then we should get to the command center. History is not going to wait for us." The command center was a vast circular room at the heart of the flagship. Representatives from all 6 Alliance species worked side by side, coordinating the massive fleet that would meet the enemy. High Arbiter Thiessen was there, along with the leaders of each member species. They all turned to Elena as she entered. "Ambassador," Thiessen said, "the fleet awaits your orders." This had been the most controversial part of the new alliance. After much debate, the Council had agreed that the joint fleet would be commanded by a human, not because humans were superior, but because they had proven themselves capable of thinking beyond narrow self-interest. They had shown they could make decisions for the good of all, not just their own species. Elena took her place at the central command station. Screens surrounded her, showing tactical data from across the defense line. The enemy was a dark mass on the sensors, a swarm of shapes that defied easy categorization. They were coming fast. "All ships," she said, her voice broadcasting to every vessel in the fleet. "This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez, commanding the Alliance Defense Force. In a few moments, we will face the greatest threat our galaxy has ever known. An enemy that destroyed 17 species 14,000 years ago. An enemy that knows only consumption and destruction." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We are different from those who faced this enemy before. They fought alone. They defended only their own worlds. They waited until it was too late to work together. We have learned from their mistake. Today, Vorathi fight beside humans. Kefali stand with Sindari. Morveth and Zilkari fly in formation with vessels they once considered enemies. We are united, and that unity is our greatest weapon." On the screens, the enemy grew closer. Individual shapes became visible now. Twisted things that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They were ancient and terrible, and they were hungry. "I will not promise victory," Elena continued. "I will not pretend this will be easy. Many of us will not survive this day. But I will promise you this: whatever happens, we face it together. Whatever we achieve as one. And if we fall having shown the universe that 6 species could overcome their differences and stand as allies against the darkness." She drew a deep breath. "All ships, battle formation. Protect each other. Trust each other. Fight for each other. And remember why we are here. Not for conquest. Not for glory. For survival. For the future. For every world and every child who deserves a chance to see tomorrow." The fleet began to move. Thousands of ships flowing into defensive positions with perfect coordination. 6 months of joint training had transformed former enemies into a unified fighting force. They knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. They had learned to trust. The enemy struck like a wave breaking against stone. The first moments of battle were chaos, fire, and destruction erupting across the defense line. Alliance ships fell, their hulls torn apart by weapons that seemed to feed on energy itself. But the line held. Wherever one ship faltered, another moved to support it. Wherever a gap opened, vessels from multiple species rushed to fill it. Elena commanded from the center, directing the massive battle with calm precision. She had never led a force this large, but she had spent her life studying strategy and diplomacy. She understood how different groups worked together, and she applied that understanding to the chaos of combat. Hours passed. The enemy kept coming, wave after wave of twisted shapes pouring from the darkness. The Alliance fleet was pushed back, then stabilized, then pushed back again. Losses mounted on both sides, but the Alliance refused to break. Finally, as the battle reached its climax, Elena saw the opening she had been waiting for. The enemy had committed too much to one sector, leaving their core vulnerable. It was a small window, but it was enough. "All reserve units," she commanded. "Execute Plan Omega, strike at their heart." A mixed force of human, Vorathi, and Morveth ships surged forward, diving through the gap in the enemy formation. They reached the central mass, the oldest and largest of the enemy constructs, and unleashed everything they had. The Morveth weapons were most effective, ancient technologies designed specifically for this enemy. The central mass shattered. The effect rippled outward through the entire enemy swarm. Without their coordinating intelligence, the individual constructs became confused and disorganized. The Alliance fleet pressed the advantage, destroying enemy vessels faster than they could adapt. By the time the battle ended, the enemy had been broken, not destroyed entirely, but reduced to scattered fragments that fled into the void. The galaxy would need to remain vigilant, but the immediate threat was over. Elena slumped in her chair, exhausted beyond words. Around her, cheers erupted as Alliance officers celebrated their survival. Thiessen moved to stand beside her, his ancient face showing something she had never seen there before. "Respect. You did it," he said. "You united us and led us to victory." "We did it," Elena corrected. "All of us, every species, every ship, every soldier who gave their life so others could live." She looked up at him. "That is what the Alliance means. That is why we build it. Not for any one species to dominate, but for all of us to stand together." Thiessen nodded slowly. "I confess, I never truly believed it was possible. Different species working as one, trusting each other, dying for each oath.